Galileo's Daughter, a drama of science, faith, and love by Dava Sobel. So I read Dava Sobel's book Longitude, which I think, I don't know, in my mind looms larger. It got a tremendous amount of attention at the time. And there are different, there's an illustrated edition, and there's all kinds of, I think it did really well. And so when I saw Galileo's Daughter, I saw it in a used shop somewhere, and I figured I would pick it up. And I've only dipped into it, so I haven't read the whole thing. So as an object, this is a hardback edition, comes with a And as you can see, from the author of Longitude and praise for Longitude, if a book is brand new, then the praise is sometimes for another book, but it doesn't really give you a lot of confidence that the book that you're going to read, it's not necessarily, they're praising a different book. But I think that's because the one that I've picked up here, although this book is no longer new, that the edition that I picked up, I think this is a first edition. I think. I'm not sure. You can't always tell if it doesn't say first edition, but sometimes if this series of numbers has a 1 in it, then that sometimes indicates that it's a first edition. But not always. In any case, this book has gotten more attention than its cover would suggest. Its cover that just talks about longitude. So I'm going to guess that this is a first edition. In any case, it's just a regular old hardback. There's nothing special about it. It is yellowing, so it's not acid-free paper, of course. And it looks like it's got what they call perfect binding, which is a very misleading term. If you don't know what it means, it's glued, so it's not sewn in. It's, in other words, this is a book that's, you read it a few times and the pages might start coming out, and this isn't a book that you leave for your great-grandchildren. In any case, it does have lots of illustrations throughout, or images throughout, which is cool, and I like. And I do like the treatment of the chapters here. Okay, so what's the idea? Galileo's Daughter. Is it worth it to write a book about Galileo's daughter? Well, maybe. But that's actually not what this is. It is about Galileo's daughter, but it's also a lot about Galileo himself. Basically, they wrote letters back and forth, and we don't have any of his letters, but we have a lot of her letters. Lots, dozens and dozens, maybe 100 or more, I don't remember, of her letters to him. And she comes across as a very smart person who is not just writing to her dad. She is just writing to her dad about dadly kinds of things. You're my father, so let me write about this. But she also seems to take some interest and have some knowledge and even opinions about the science itself. So she's an interesting figure. And he's an interesting figure, and so that's kind of how the book covers it. It's sort of a biography-ish of the two together. And when you're dealing with letters, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes Dava Sobel, will even say, she wrote this in I don't remember the details, but in a shaky hand, or she wrote this in a more controlled than usual, or that kind of a thing. And then you can try to read get some kind of insight into what she was feeling or thinking as she wrote that. It's different today when everything's an email or something, but when you're writing with your hand and your writing is different, then it can inspire some questions. Why was it different? What were you saying here? Or what was going on in your life? Or were you rushed? Or were you sick or something? Or were you trying to control your emotions and so you wrote differently? So I'll just give you an indication of the table of contents here. I'm not going to go too much into Galileo. Presumably, most people know who Galileo was. He got into some trouble because he believed that the earth goes around the sun instead of the other way around. He did a lot more than that. He did a lot of science, but so I don't know if this comes across very well in the video. It's got this sort of fancy chapters here because it's based on letters, really. So that's, I think, what we're going for. He got in a bit of trouble. They said, don't do that anymore. Don't talk about how the earth goes around the sun. And he kind of went, okay. Lots and lots of pictures. So if the subject interests you at all, Dava Sobel is a very, she has a sure hand. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to tell a story. And as far as I can tell, not knowing very much about it, she gets the history right and the science right. Okay, 300 something pages, and in the end, we got a bit of a timeline. I always find it interesting, when we talk about historical figures, what else was happening at that time. I find that pretty interesting. I have some notes on the text. Oh, wow, so when Shakespeare was writing Hamlet, what else was happening in the world that I keep in a different part of my brain that I never think of those things happening at the same time. These people are contemporaries. So I like a timeline like that. Okay, this is Galileo's Daughter, a drama of science, faith, and love by Dava Sobel.